Number 10, Cable. Cable is not only dangerous to others he comes up against as a hero, but he's even dangerous to himself. Cable is a badass from the future who is taken there in his youth to protect him and ensure his survival. He has since made his way all across and through time, and has even returned to the present from the future, which is his past. Yeah, it's a lot of time travel stuff. It can get a little confusing. When Cable dies, it isn't even because anyone else took him out either, and he even saw it coming, because it turns out that his younger self was the one responsible, a version of the character we often refer to as young Cable or Kid Cable. So yeah, Cable is deadly in the sense that he'll do whatever he needs to, even if it means ending his own time loop by killing his older self. Does that make sense? I hope what I said just made sense. I think it made sense. Number 9, Old Woman Laura. X-23's future self ends up in a much nicer alternate future reality than her genetic father Wolverine. Old Man Logan's reality? Wasteland, lots of death and people who have gone insane. Cannibalism. Old Woman Laura's reality? A sort of futuristic paradise where Kamala Khan ends up as president. But even still, her future isn't perfect, because Laura is dying. Her genes have become unstable in her old age due to a flaw in the cloning process that made her not so good. The other thing that's not so good? Doom is holding the people of Latveria hostage, and it's up to Laura to put a stop to it. This version of Laura from the future is just as deadly as her main continuity counterpart, but with added years of experience, and is willing to do whatever it takes to defeat Doom, even if it means killing him and possibly sacrificing herself to do it. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you love time traveling as much as I love time traveling, click that like. Every time you click that like, there's a chance you could go back in time. That's not true, but wouldn't it be cool if when you clicked like on videos, you could time travel? That would be pretty cool. Number 8, Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan stays a hero in the future, but only because he doesn't have much other choice, really. Really, all Logan wants to do is live his life without having to think too much of all the deaths of his friends that he's responsible for. Logan in the alternate future of Earth 807128 ends up killing all of his fellow X-Men after being tricked into thinking they were all villains by Mysterio. Not only was he capable of causing all of that death, but further into the future, he goes up against a powerful and horrific villain in his time and reality, facing the head of the HAWKE gang and also sort of his landlord, Pappy Banner, aka Old Man Hulk. Something went wrong with Bruce Banner as time went on in this reality, and he basically lost his mind, likely as a result of that gamma radiation affecting him well into his elder years, and not in a good way. Logan ends up being swallowed whole by Hulk, but defeats him in the end by cutting his way out of Old Man Hulk's gut. It's pretty gross. Number 7, Green Lantern. Jessica Cruz from our time might not be quite so dangerous yet, but when we glimpsed into her possible future in the Future State line from DC, we learned that there is a future version of her who becomes a Yellow Lantern, joining the Sinestro Corps. Not all Yellow Lanterns are bad, but because they are generally about instilling fear in others, they more often than not tend to end up becoming deadly supervillains. And that's usually who they are. Jessica Cruz found herself stranded on a Green Lantern base and outpost without her powers, and when Sinestro Corps members showed up to investigate, found herself offered a Yellow Lantern ring after her fight against them had resulted in her overcoming her own fears and instilling fear into the hearts of her enemies. Which I'm not gonna lie, I really like that twist in the future for Jessica. I think Jessica as a Yellow Lantern is really cool. Number 6, The Fallen One. The Fallen One is a version of Norrin Rad who comes from a very dark future where Thanos wins. He first appeared in issue 15 of Thanos from 2016 in the Thanos Wins storyline. While he is pretty swiftly defeated, it is only because those he goes up against are even more deadly than him. And even then, it takes a few issues before the fight against him is actually concluded. So it's not like you're in, you're out. It's not a one and done. It's a few issues. Norrin Rad, aka the Silver Surfer, became the Fallen One after he was imbued with black matter and also boasts, of course, of the power cosmic, in addition to wielding Thor's hammer Mjolnir. He also comes leading the charge of the Annihilation Wave, so he's got a lot going on. He got all this power in the hopes of standing a chance in the final showdown with Thanos, as one of the last beings left alive in the universe, one of the final people to actually fight him. Sadly, he does fail, but he still manages to look deadly and badass while doing so. So you gotta give him some points for that. Number 5, Superman. John Kent in Future State takes up the mantle of of Superman after his father. This also happens after his father left Earth, and many of those who he helped believe that he actually has gone missing, possibly to never return. That's what people think is going on with OG Superman. Well, we skip through the future timeline and future state with this version of John from this future being shown as a very heroic character. We also see some things that he does in this futuristic timeline that seem, well, not so heroic. Like when he bottled the city of Metropolis. John believed he had no other choice and that this was kind of the most peaceful solution to fixing the problems that the city faced at the time. However, he later is forced to confront the fact that he took away the freedom of the people of Metropolis when he made this choice for them. Future state John Kent is dangerous because he is willing to do whatever it takes to protect the city of Metropolis, which sometimes means taking actions that other heroes like Supergirl find questionable. Number 4, King Thor. King Thor might be one of the most powerful future heroes on this list, but he also is only so deadly and dangerous because he's living in a time where he has to be. King Thor is the alternate future version of Thor from the alternate Earth of 14412. Here, Thor goes on to become the Allfather and lives beyond the point where Midgard becomes a lifeless husk as a result of Thor's once more again villainous brother Loki, the god of mischief. At one point while battling Doom in the future, King Thor is granted the Phoenix Force by Logan, who is currently bonded to it at that time, and is able to use that power to defeat Doom. Considering that King Thor will do whatever it takes to defeat those who would oppose him, and considering how much power he wields, even when he doesn't have the Phoenix Force, I'd say he's a pretty dangerous future hero. I wouldn't want to go up against him. Number 3, Cosmic Ghost Rider. I would say Cosmic Ghost Rider is one of the most dangerous heroes on this list because he's not entirely mentally stable, which also makes him a lot more unpredictable. Cosmic Ghost Rider was originally Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. When Thanos attacked Earth, Frank made a deal with Mephisto, following his death, to become a spirit of vengeance, a Ghost Rider, so that he could return to Earth and get revenge on Thanos for all of the people on Earth that he had killed. However, by the time Frank returned to Earth, there was basically nothing left to avenge, and Thanos had already left, leaving the planet empty and desolate. Frank wandered as a Ghost Rider for years, and in his solitude, lost his mind. He would go on to become a Herald of Galactus in an attempt to defeat Thanos, but would eventually submit to being Thanos' Herald after realizing that fighting against him was pretty pointless. Number 2, Booster Gold. Booster Gold is demonstrably dangerous as a hero from the future, mainly because he has no idea what he's doing. He has tons of knowledge of what is meant to happen in the main continuity and present day that he traveled to from the future, but he has no idea of how messing with the past timeline or anything like that could affect the present day or its future. We see how dangerous he can be when he attempts to even do good, like saving Bruce's parents in the past so that they can be there for his wedding. Unfortunately, in doing so, completely messes with the timeline to the point that Booster is actually forced to travel back in time and make sure that Bruce's parents are killed, and that poor young Bruce is basically there to witness their deaths. It's also kind of implied that Booster being there and fixing all of that is actually what caused their deaths. It's pretty crazy, it's pretty trippy. Booster might have some valuable knowledge as someone from the future, but he doesn't have the finesse needed to know when the timeline can be tweaked and when it should be left alone to avoid catastrophes from manifesting in the future. Basically, do not let Booster time travel and mess with the timeline. It is not a good idea. Number 1, Iron Lad. Iron Lad is not specifically from the future, but he does go on to become a very dangerous villain who returns from the future. Iron Lad, who was a member of the Young Avengers, it turns out is actually destined to become Kang the Conqueror, who has many different villainous personas throughout the years. I won't go into them right now, but you know some of them. And he's also known for his time travel antics. He often travels back through to the past from the future to enact all kinds of elaborate plots. As a Mortis, he had a hand in creating White Vision. Kang also at one point turns Iron Man evil, brainwashing him into becoming his loyal servant and villainous right-hand man. He's basically behind a lot of evil things that you're like, what is even happening here? And then it'll be like, haha, it was Kang the whole time. Possibly what we'll see in the MCU. I'm placing my bets. because sadly I don't think I'm getting Norman Osborn in this phase.
And at 10, Booster Gold. Michael John Carter started off as a glory-hogging show-off from the 25th century. Michael is a gifted athlete, getting to attend Gotham University on a football scholarship, until his father came back into his life. After leaving because of a gambling problem, Michael, desperate for the approval of the father he just met, gets convinced to intentionally lose football games for gambling purposes. But when he was discovered, he got expelled and ended up getting a job at the Metropolis Space Museum. However, with the aid of a robot named Skeets, Michael stole devices from the museum displays about superheroes, including a Legion of Superheroes flight ring and Brainiac 5's force field belt. With the help of Rip Hunter's time sphere, Michael traveled to the 20th century, intent on becoming a superhero and turning it into a business for his own gain. Which, I mean, kinda smart. Like what Billy thought during the beginning of his superhero career in the Shazam movie. Eventually, Booster Gold ended up discovering his true abilities and actually liked the whole superhero thing, so he just stuck to it without as much of a hidden agenda. And at 9, Future Flash. While some may consider Future Flash as a villain, and it's technically true, he is still Barry Allen with a cause that, I mean, seems fairly normal, at least in the comic book version of normal. While yes, the villains justify their missions, Barry's mission was to kill himself in order to prevent Wally from dying, thus changing the future, and thus everything he did in the future would be obsolete. He wouldn't have needed to kill all the rogues or any other villain, and he wouldn't be alive to do it, thus saving everyone else in the future, since he only killed them to gain enough speed to travel back in time. So while yes, he did kill a lot of people, he did it so that it wouldn't happen, so technically he killed them in order to save their lives. So it's a very noble cause. We talk about weird stuff like this literally all the time, and it's kind of sad how I understand it perfectly. My whole family watches the Flash series on the CW, but my mom stopped because she couldn't understand the whole timeline shenanigans thing. But I could, fairly easily. And I understand this perfectly, even if it's confusing. And at 8, Spider-Man 2099. Miguel O'Hara was born in New York City many years after the end of the Heroic Age, which is our modern day of hero stories. Eventually in life, Miguel becomes the head of genetics program at Alchemax, intended to create new super soldiers they call Corporate Raiders. Great name. Miguel is inspired by Spider-Man and uses records of him as a reference in hope that one day he can create a similarly powered person. After a human test subject dies, Miguel wants to resign. However, his boss, Tyler Stone, instead tricks him into getting addicted to Rapture, a highly addictive drug that only he can provide to Miguel, if he keeps working for him. But luckily Miguel had put his own genetic code into the machine during initial experiments, so he attempted to use it to set his DNA back to before he got addicted. Smart plan. Except Miguel's rival Aaron Delgado sabotages the machine, causing Michael to gain 50% spider DNA. He survives the sabotage but then realizes he has spider abilities. His boss sends men to try to find this new spider person, and Miguel dons a costume to conceal his identity while he combats his pursuers. However, some people actually believe that Miguel is the original Spider-Man back from the dead and thought to bring back the return of Thor. I've said it before, but Spider-Man 2099 is my favorite alternate version of Spider-Man because Edge of Time is one of my favorite Spider-Man games, and that costume is just dope as hell. Like, look at it. Ah! And at 7, XS. Jenny Ognat is the granddaughter of Barry Allen and was kidnapped by the Dominators, even though at first she did not show any signs of super speed. Her super speed only activated when she saw her father being tortured by the Dominators. She was able to escape with her father before fire from the Dominators caused their base to explode. After this incident, she checked herself into a lab to get help in controlling her super speed. Once she did, she was drafted into the Legion of Superheroes, at least if you look at the comic version. In the Arrowverse, XS is the first daughter of Barry Allen and Iris West Allen, played by the wonderful Jessica Parker Kennedy, who came from the future during seasons 4 of 5 of that show to meet her father and get to know him, and train alongside him. She appeared at her parents' wedding and various other places in season 4, and only really made an impact in the season 4 finale where she helped Barry destroy the Starlab satellite that the Thinker had sent crashing to Earth. Her helping her father caused events in the timeline to be moved up, like the appearance of Cicada and the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, which was probably only because Arrow couldn't get enough seasons to make it to 2024, unfortunately, since Emily Bett had left and Steven decided it was time to say goodbye. So, I blame you, XS, for ending Arrow. And at 6, Cable. Cable's first appearance was in the New Mutants number 86 and a next issue teaser, which was followed with a full appearance in the New Mutants number 87. At first, Cable was meant to be an entirely separate character, a new leader that contrasted their first mentor, Professor X. However, he was later written to be a future version of Nathan Summers, the son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor, also known as Jean Grey's clone. He's from the future since as an infant he was transported to the future where he grew up to be a cybernetically enhanced warrior before returning to the present because comics. There's also a young version of Cable that comes from not as far in the future, that he comes back and then kills his older self because he wouldn't send the X-Men back to their proper time. Something which young Cable does to keep time intact, but then he resurrects his father using a bit of the Phoenix Force, which is basically the same thing that old Cable was doing, but like... So an even younger version of Cable comes along and kills young Cable. Okay, not really, but can you imagine how screwy that would be? Like a baby Cable just pulled up in a stroller and shot him in the head. Oh my god, I need that. Oh, Boss Baby number 2. I think that would be kind of funny, but also really headache-inducing when it comes to the timeline and paradoxes and whatnot. But, you know, typical comic book scenarios. Halfway through number 5, Rip Hunter. Rip Hunter is one hell of a man. He is a time traveler, guardian of the time stream, leader of the Time Masters, and previous leader of the Legends of Tomorrow. Rip spent his entire life planning for enemies a time traveler would face, so in an effort to prevent someone from killing him as a child, he invented the alias of Rip Hunter, when he is in fact the son of Booster Gold, something that not even Booster Gold knows. Rip invented time travel technology in the post-crisis universe, and has helped both Booster Gold and Animal Man in their time traveling escapades before taking on the Illuminati conspiracy. This dude took on the Illuminati. If this video gets demonetized, just know that it was them. Rip eventually ended up getting stranded in the past in the prehistoric era. Somehow he was able to return to the present, and after doing so, he began protecting Earth's heroes from time-traveling villains. In the CW's Legends of Tomorrow, Rip assembled a team of heroes who were known as Legends in the future in an effort to prevent Vandal Savage from taking over the world and killing his family as he had in his timeline. But it was later revealed that he picked a team of individuals who weren't remembered by time, and that wouldn't be missed if they died, even though Sarah Lance had come back from the dead like 3 separate times at this point. And at 4, Old Man Logan. The world of Earth 807128 has been conquered and divided among supervillains, with territories belonging to the Abomination, Magneto, Doctor Doom, and the Red Skull, who had named himself President of the United States, which sounds an awful lot like what the Beyonder did in the Spider-Man 90s cartoon, where he sent the Red Skull, Doc Ock, Doctor Doom, and the Lizard to a planet unknowing of evil to see how they would react. And those 4 villains took over the planet and ended up having Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Captain America, and Storm, along with the Lizard, take them down. However, in this story, Logan lives with his wife and children in California until the Hulk Gang, which is a group of what I'm going to call Hulklings, created when Hulk had assaulted his first cousin, She-Hulk, and then the Hulklings kill his family. And Logan says the Wolverine persona had died when the villains attacked and conquered, only using his claws once after that event. His mission was to get revenge for his family and kill Maestro, a future version of the Hulk. And in the Venomverse, this version of Old Man Logan raises Bruce Banner Jr. for 15 years before telling him of his true parentage. At that point, Bruce gets mad and storms out, which is really weird and confusing. Why would you do that? Your father was a psycho, of course he wouldn't tell you. And at 3, Batman Beyond. After everyone Batman cares about is dead, he's given up fighting crime. But an athletic 16-year-old named Terry McGinnis. Terry is his name, and I know it. After stumbling upon the Batcave, Terry realizes who he really wants to be and begins fighting crime under the tutelage of Bruce. But Terry has the aid of a new age high-tech bat suit that augments his abilities, which I don't really understand, but hey, it's 2039, so who knows what tech we will have by then. However, Batman retires in 2019, so technically at this point he isn't fighting crime anymore. I know that he still has comics being published, but like, he isn't retired, but he is also retired. Like, no more Batman for you. Also, Terry, his name is Terry. I will not make the same mistake again. It's Terry, not Tyler. And if you don't understand, I accidentally started calling Terry Tyler because I was just typing and wasn't paying attention, so I just typed Tyler. Yeah, I called him Terry at the beginning of that number, just not the rest of the time. It's kind of a joke here now. When I first started. And then to Connor Hawke. The CW has had quite a bit of time travel over the years, and while in the comics Connor Hawke may be the son of Oliver Queen, on TV he's actually the adopted son of John Diggle. Originally in the timeline, John Diggle Jr. was Connor Hawke, but after Flashpoint and Excess changed the timeline, John Diggle Jr. became the new Deathstroke and leader of the Deathstroke gang. And the hero known as Connor Hawke is the son of Ben Turner, aka Bronze Tiger, and Sandra Hawke. Bronze Tiger did actually renew his name when he helped Oliver stop the riots after Diaz attacked the prison in an effort to kill Oliver, but eventually Ben ended up dying due to a stray arrow that Connor couldn't stop. If the timeline from the Legends episode of Star City 2046 is still canon, considering how that at that point he was John Diggle Jr., not Connor, but I don't know. I can't confirm. A lot of things in the show got screwy. Anyways, he was brought to the past when the Monitor brought him, Mia, Smoke Queen, and William Clayton back after Renee's daughter had just been killed by John Diggle Jr., so that they could meet their fathers in their prime and help in the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, which only Mia ended up helping in. So, yeah, the other two kind of like didn't show up. So yeah, thanks for that. It's not like the universe was ending or anything. Finally, into number 1, Old Man Peter. Old Man Peter is probably the most horrifying story on this list. The story of Spider-Man Reign is a 4-issue comic limited series set 30 years into the Spider-Man of Earth 70237's future. In this future, New York City is essentially a safe area, even if it's under total control of its mayor. Superheroes and supervillains are gone, but the government has an incredibly ruthless police force known as the Rain. Peter works as a florist but ends up getting fired because he's Peter, but when he gets home, there is news of police brutality coming from the Rain. J. Jonah Jameson delivers Peter a package, not like that. He also apologizes to Peter, saying he sold the paper because of the lies. Inside the package was Peter's old camera and the black-suited Spider-Man mask. When J-Cube starts a riot, Peter puts on the mask and fights off the Rain wearing only his mask and his underwear, which is disturbing on its own. But the worst part about this is that Mary Jane is dead, dying due to being exposed to radiation thanks to trying to have kids with Peter. Meaning that Spider-Man is so radioactive that his swimmers killed his wife. Which is horrifying and has way too many implications, and I don't want to think about it. Did they have like 5 heads or something? Great, now I'm thinking about it.
Starting us off in at number 10, Earth X Namor. We're starting off our list with a future version of a hero that's quite disturbing. We're talking Namor, the Submariner on Earth X, also known as Earth 9997, an alternate timeline created by Alex Ross. On Earth X, all ordinary human beings have gained superpowers. It follows some of Marvel's mainstays and how they cope with a world in which superpowers are now commonplace. As you can imagine, their narratives have drastically changed because of this. Namor is one of the many heroes that doesn't have an overly pleasant time in this alternate universe. Thanks to having teamed up with Dr. Doom in the past, he's partially responsible for an event that killed Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. As you can imagine, this did not bode well with Franklin Richards, who would use his reality-bending powers to punish the Underwater Prince. How so? Well, he made it so that exactly half of Namor's body is constantly on fire when he was above water, scarring his body immensely. Eventually, the curse would be counteracted thanks to a spell via Doctor Strange. Speaking of Earth X, that brings us to our next number. In at 9, Earth X Cable. Cable of Earth 9997 has it even rougher than Namor. He's a literal pool of organic metal. Thanks to the techno-organic virus, Earth X Cable has a pretty gruesome fate. Hidden from the rest of society, planted beneath Magneto's Sentinel City in the Savage Land, the virus has completely taken control of him and has reduced his body to an immobile blob of metal. And it's pretty creepy looking. He's basically an entrapped giant living beneath the earth. Moving on to number 8, Doom 2099. So yes, Dr. Doom is way more villain than anti-hero, but we wanted to include this version of him on this list because it's utterly terrifying. Doom of Earth 928, aka the 2099 alternate reality, is known as All-Father Doom. It's worth noting that this universe is very much a bleak, cynical one. Now, this Doom is technically not Victor, but rather a man who believed himself to be Doom, having awakened in Latveria in the year of 2099. He takes over Latveria and then gradually starts planning on how to take over the rest of the world, so it should be no surprise that he claimed the United States presidency too. Moving on to number 7, Dark Beast. Dark Beast is a product of the Age of Apocalypse timeline, known as Earth 295. Now this is an alternate future timeline in which Charles Xavier is dead and Apocalypse managed to take over all of North America. Magneto leads the resistance. He's also shacking up with Rogue, not that it matters, but just to paint a picture for y'all. Anyway, Dark Beast is Hank McCoy, except he is a straight up evil mad scientist. He's a twisted, inhumane, sadistic genius who lacks Xavier's guidance and isn't part of the X-Men. Rather, he works for Apocalypse, becoming one of the most prominent geneticists who devoted his time to creating the fittest of beings for the villain, second to only Mr. Sinister's counterpart, Sinister, who was one of Apocalypse's horsemen. Dark Beast would conduct horrific experiments and eventually found his way into the 616 for a brief period of time, causing quite the stir in that universe. Moving on to number 6, Magus. Magus is quite literally the definition of an evil future alternate version of a hero. That hero is Adam Warlock. Now Warlock, arguably one of the most noble individuals in the 616 Marvel Universe, has an evil future version who first appeared in 1975 in Strange Tales issue 178. He hails from Earth 7528, born of Chaos and Order's efforts to create a champion of life to oppose Thanos, who was the champion of death. he would found something called the Universal Church of Truth, which the tyrant expanded into an intergalactic empire through Holy War. Ah, Holy War. In our number 5 spot, Bruce Banner of Earth 9591. So from here on out, we've got quite the selection of Bruce Banner alternates for you all. Starting off with this one from Earth 9591, also known as the Ruins universe. Now for context, Ruins is a 1995 limited series that follows a former Daily Bugle reporter named Phil Sheldon as he navigates a dystopian alternate reality in which, according to him, I quote, "everything that can go wrong will go wrong." Now in comparison to the 616, it is a reality filled with experiments and accidents that resulted in painful deaths and horrible deformities rather than individuals with superpowers. This version of Banner is no exception. He was horrifically mutated after saving Rick Jones during the gamma bomb experimentation that would normally give him his powers. On this much more realism-inspired Earth, the exposure transformed him into a mass of pulsating green tumors. He would eventually be captured and held by the CIA, not that it would improve his existence anymore though. And if that doesn't freak you out, the description of this Banner via Rick Jones describing his transformation likely will. I quote, "It hurt to look at him. His skin went black and dry and cracked, and light shone out of him, like all his meat was on fire. Then he started to swell, and then the tumors broke him open." I mean, when someone describes you as all of your meat was on fire, something to be worried about. Moving on to number 4, Old Man Banner. Old Man Banner definitely falls into the disturbing category of our list. Old Man Banner is from the same universe as Old Man Logan, and is the primary antagonist of that storyline, or rather, the ultimate boss battle for Logan in it. In that 2008 story, supervillains have taken over the universe, and many of the superheroes are dead. Now when that takeover was happening, Wolverine was tricked into believing that the X-Men were all villains, so he attacked them and killed them. When the illusion was lifted, all he saw was their maimed dead corpses, which drove him into seclusion, swearing that he would never unleash his claws again. Fast forward to much later. Logan has kept his promise and has settled down, now with a wife and children. But he is not by any means free. The Hulk actually owns the land that he lives on and is effectively his landlord, and isn't a good one. When Logan can't pay off his debt, he ends up agreeing to take a now blind Hawkeye across the Savage Land. But when he returns, he learns that Banner ordered his family to be killed anyway. So he goes after Banner, who in this universe has been driven mad by gamma radiation, and has had a bunch of inbred children with his cousin, She-Hulk. When the two duke it out, he literally eats Logan, who then unleashes his claws and digs his way out of Banner's stomach, inevitably killing him. Moving on to number 3, Genocide. We're going to be talking about a DC character at this number. Genocide, the character. We're not getting that dark today, my friends. Well, maybe a little. Genocide is a pretty morbid character. She was created from the corpse of Wonder Woman in a storyline called Rise of the Olympian after Diana's body was stolen by Ares and then brought back in time during Gail Simone's run on the Wonder Woman series. It gets more grim than that. Ares imbued Wonder Woman's body with energy from soil samples pulled across the globe from places where genocides occurred. So yeah, this includes Auschwitz and Rwanda. And on Genocide's very first encounter with Wonder Woman, she kicked her butt and also stole her lasso of truth. Yikes. And at number 2, Injustice Superman. Injustice Superman is the product of the Joker tricking the Man of Steel into killing his pregnant wife, Lois Lane. As you can imagine, when Clark finds out the truth, he loses it. Not even Batman can stop the Man of Tomorrow from thrusting his fist through the chest of the Joker in one of the most gruesome moments in alternate Superman history. This is the catalyst to the Injustice storyline, a world in which Superman becomes a tyrant, ruling supreme, opposed by a rebellion led by none other than Batman. Believing that he and other metahumans are meant to police the world in order to make it a better place, he goes too far, becoming a racist dictator. It's both an Elseworlds comic tale and the primary plot of 2 Injustice video games, the latter being more impressive than the former, if we're being honest. And last but not least, in at number 1, Maestro Hulk. Maestro Hulk is Hulk at his absolute prime, but insane and completely, totally evil, and arguably one of the biggest threats on this list, because it's a Hulk who not only is immortal and has unlimited power the angrier he gets, but also a Hulk who is cunning and intelligent. Let's backtrack for a hot sec though. First appearing in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect issue 1 back in 1992, this version of Banner is from Earth 9200, which takes place 100 years into the future after a nuclear war killed off most of Earth's superheroes. The planet is on the brink of extinction, and Hulk has seized control of it. He's been driven mad by the nuclear radiation and is bitter at the world for how he had been treated in the past. That's a deadly combination. He's also stronger than the regular Banner, with the radiation increasing his strength.
Number 10. Old Man Deadpool. The Old Man, or rather old character, because there was an Old Lady Harley miniseries as well, really had a bit of a revival after Logan, after some fans learned that some elements from it were akin to Old Man Logan, the comic, and so flocked over there in a rare display of horizontal marketing without having to try too hard. So we had some other older versions, including Old Man Deadpool. This occurred in Spider-Man and Deadpool's team-up book during the period of time when it was a versus Deadpool instead of a slash book because of their friendship was on the fritz. I said it was a slash book, and some people who are into shipping will take that another way, and that's fine, you do you. Although, let's be honest, even for the most Spidey pooliest out there amongst you, even when their friendship was on the ups in that book series, it was still on the down and could use a bit of work. Still, that's what fandom and fanfics are for. So in this arc, Deadpool and Spider-Man are at the same old folks' home, and Deadpool takes Peter out for another adventure as he has been riddled with guilt over being the person who cost him the use of his legs, and he actually gave him a secret blood transfusion to keep him alive, which has resulted in Peter outliving a lot of his friends and family. This accident was also where he learned Peter's secret identity. This was actually a cute romp, and they ended up traveling back in time and meeting their younger selves, but based on how this comic ended at issue 50, with arresting the author thanks to Gwenpool, it doesn't really feel that anything that happened in it will have too big of a lasting impact. R.I.P. Old Man Deadpool and Peter. Number 9. Nightwing New Order. This Nightwing comes from a dark future where he has become a tyrant, a meta-human hunter. This is after the Metropolis Wars of 2028, so we've only got a few good years left. Also, if you're from the future, tell me how it was. Dick snapped after Bruce died during this conflict, and so he activated a device that nullified metahuman abilities, and he became the leader of a group known as the Crusaders, who dedicated themselves to hunting down metahumans. By 2040, he'd been doing this openly, but he was met with a personal dilemma when his son Jake Grayson? Okay. Started to develop meta abilities. There was a fight with Batwoman who was bitter because Dick had become the leader of the Crusaders and not her. This arc was actually pretty cool. R.I.P. Dick Grayson. Your replacement Rick isn't cutting it. I miss you every day. Booty memes on Twitter aren't the same. Number 8. Young Cable kills old Cable. This happened in the arc Extermination, or New Extermination, cause you know, X-puns and extreme. So both versions of Cable are from the future, but how far in the future is what varies. So part of getting the young X-Men back in time, and then back again, but we'll explain that, cause that was what we were doing for a time. It was part of the, ooh, our main timeline has gotten too convoluted, people miss the classic X-Men, so let's bring them forward in time, because that won't confuse anybody. Then we'll just have them do great things like Jean telling Bobby that he's gay and, well, did anything else really monumental happen except for confusion that still lingers with casual fans? But then they realized that that wasn't working, so they had to send them back, and hence Extermination came in. House of X is here to save us all from all of this. May all of this canon matter? Yes, but never need to be referenced again. So why did young Cable kill old Cable? Well, because his older version was soft and weak and hadn't done his job protecting the timeline, which had allowed the mess of the young X-Men going back in time to happen in the first place. Which seems like a bit too much to blame on Cable, but okay. Wibbly wobbly timey wimey, they went back to the past. Young, hot Cable, question mark, is still around. Old Cable was hotter, but that's just me, we're moving on. Cable is always just having different things happen to him. I'm sure he'll be old again, maybe he's old again already. Speaking of old, in at number 7, Old Man Logan. So we need to talk about the classic Logan story that started it all off, and also gave us a really creepy Hulk. This is actually a really depressing tale about Old Man Logan and his MacGuffin family, murdered so he can grotesquely kill the Hulk. All of his family too, except for one little baby. Seriously though, this story is cool. America divided up into factions, heroes all but extinct, people living in fear, Venom T-Rex. So the one issue I have with this story is the idea, spoiler for a story that's over a decade old, that Logan could kill all the X-Men, and that they wouldn't have even been able to subdue him or knock him out. Yes, he is a Wolverine, and Wolverines are fierce creatures, but like Storm, Jean, everybody, really? I don't know. It's a cool story though, and him battling the Red Skull, totally worth it. The fights in this comic are all amazing. Number 6, Deathwing. Ah, Deathwing, the Dick Grayson from the future who'd be retconned to not being Dick, and then just be an entirely different character in Rebirth, just cause why not? If you can make something confusing in comic book continuity, that's always the choice to go with. Well, I mean, the Rebirth one thinks he's Dick Grayson, but initially the first Deathwing was Dick from the future, from an edgy timeline where he was fighting Lord Chaos. This would be retconned to him just being some guy who had been implanted with memories from Dick Grayson. Why? Because he became a rapist, that's why, and we can't have that. That dystopian Titan's future had some grunge fashion choices, and that's honestly what I remember the most about it, because if you stare at Deathwing too long, he has nipple piercings. These are the things I spend my time thinking about. Some people think about stats or power levels. I think about how high 80s Nightwing's collar was and how he probably always hit the back of his head against it. How starched was it to stay up like that? Inquiring minds need to know. All these details together flesh out the universe. Number 5, Spider-Man Reign. Spider-Man Reign. The Peter who killed MJ with his radioactive semen. But so much more happened than that. This mini was 4 issues and also featured an old Spider-Man. So in this world, it's 30 years in the future and most crime is gone, but only because of a super aggressive police force called Reign. Peter's in his early 70s and he's a florist, and he is lured back to action by memories of his past and the brutality of Reign, who upon his return released some of his greatest and also geriatric villains to take him on. It's a really depressing comic, and every time I read it I'm sad. Number 4, Batman Earth 12, Batman Beyond, or Batman of the Future. That's what the show was called in Europe. So Terry McGinnis was the Batman of the future of the DCEU, a teen who took up the mantle after meeting Bruce Wayne while being chased by some members of the Jokers, a gang who idolized the original Joker. After the death of his father, he would steal the Batsuit and take action, with Bruce taking him on as Batman and acting as his mentor. People really enjoyed this series, but in comics it takes place on an alternate Earth, cause there's way too much existing continuity for that to be the natural progression of the future. Plus, you know, Damian. Terry is still around in his own comics, well I mean not at this exact instance, at the time of this recording, but they're worth a read if you love that universe and want to see more action within it. Number 3, Future Flash, or Blue Flash. So this is the Flash from the future who's not Impulse. So this version of the Flash was Barry Allen from 20 years in the future, who was racked with guilt over feeling responsible for the death of Wally West. So what did he do? He started killing his rogues so that he could gain enough speed to go back in time to prevent Wally's death. Obviously he would ultimately end up in a battle with his past self, and end up trapped there. Always a risk when you time travel, you may not be going back. So hopefully you like the past and everyone there likes your slick blue costume. Are you menaced by the dark blue costume? Will you sleep again? I shouldn't joke like that, not with some of the scary lists we've done. I don't have a leg to stand on. Number 2, Spider-Man 2099. It's that one 2099 comic that most people remember. Spider-Man, Miguel O'Hara, the head of the genetics program at Alchemax. He was trying to create super soldiers called Corporate Raiders, and was trying to make them like Spider-Man, a historical figure who inspired him. However, after a human test subject dies, Miguel wants to quit, but his boss, Tyler Stone, what a name, won't let him, and instead gets him addicted to drugs that the company will supply him with, or he can go get them on the street and get arrested. So Miguel tries to rewrite his DNA because the drug has bonded to it, and bingo bongo, Spider-Man, because one of his subordinates sabotaged the machine. You know, part of what made Miguel stand out is that his origin was so interesting. It has a very cyberpunky feel to it, especially with all the corptocracy stuff, and his costume looked amazing. The black, the red, it's striking. Miguel felt complete, and his story had stakes. It's no wonder he's the one most people think of when they think of 2099 heroes. Marvel's planning a huge 2099 blitz designed to make you have to go collect them all like Pokemon. So get ready to see Miguel again, along with a bunch of other 2099 characters, old and new, that you may or may not care about. Number 1, Superman of Earth 2 / all the Earth 2 heroes really, classic Earth 2. Earth 2 heroes appeared at the dawn of Earth 2 in the future by default. This started when the Silver and Golden Age Flashes met. Earth 2 became a refuge for DC's heroes from the Golden Age, so that they could publish both types of comics at the same time. So on Earth 2, the timeline had still been in motion from the start, so you had an older Superman and Batman in circulation, along with all the other characters also just being older, which allowed those stories to continue on alongside the adventures of their younger counterparts. These versions would meet often and eventually would have plots so convoluted that DC would feel the need to collapse Earth 2 and the multiverse in general, only to bring it back years later. This was actually a really chill and clever way to have a concurrent future back in the day.